We must define our effort not as a boundless global war on terror, but rather as a series of persistent, targeted efforts to dismantle specific networks of violent extremists that threaten America.
I believe we're in a war that's not winding down. We're in a war that's morphing. I support the concepts that the President talks about in many ways, but if he doesn't change his policies, the Middle East is going to blow up. And we're going to get hit again here at home to President Obama. Your foreign policy is not working. You need to adjust it.
Address it.
Close Guantanamo today.
Why don't you let me address it, ma'am?
Release those 86 prisoners.
Why don't you sit down and I will tell you exactly what I'm going to do.
Today.
Look at the current situation where we are force-feeding detainees who are being held on a hunger strike. I'm willing to cut the young lady who interrupted me some slack because it's worth being passionate about.
Okay, Charles, first of all, the overview of this speech, it was lengthy, it was detailed. Your thoughts?
Look, I give the President credit for moral seriousness, but there's a flaw at the center of it which has to do with the strategic idea that he has. His central idea here is, and explains why he wants to restrict the drone warfare. It explains why he wants to shut Guantanamo. It explains why he wants to change and ultimately repeal the law that authorizes a war on terror. He wants all of that. But it derives from this notion, which is every war has to come to an end. Every war in the past has, and he says this war, like all wars, must end. That is a naive and utopian idea. It is true that all other wars have ended. But to end a war, you need two sides. You're either going to have a surrender, like the Germans and the Japanese. Even Kim Il-sung agreed to an armistice. It was not unilateral. You don't declare the war's over, and if there's no response, assume with your head in the sand it's over. And in the Cold War, there never was a surrender, but the Soviet Union disappeared. But that was after half a century. Here we are 12 years in. It's as if Obama stood up in 1958 and said, the Cold War has to end, and I'm going to end it. The problem is it doesn't end until either al-Qaeda disappears or it renounces a declaration of war made in 1996. And that's why all the proposals he wants are completely impractical and ultimately harmful. It's the way he's been talking about it ever since the raid on bin Laden, as if that somehow means, in a larger sense, the war on terror is won, and we can now walk away. Look, this is why he talks about the closing of Guantanamo. Now, let's assume that you can remove some and send them into Yemen, even though he himself has said in the speech, Yemen doesn't have a government, and we can be sure they're going to return and attack Americans, even if you try a lot of them in the U.S. He himself admits in the speech, one issue remains how to deal with the Gitmo detainees that you cannot prosecute. Now, that's the issue. He doesn't, and he has no answer. The issue isn't Guantanamo or putting him in the U.S. or putting him on the island of Elba. It's not a geography issue. It's the issue of indefinite detention. As long as the war doesn't end, that's the issue, then you don't release the prisoners.
As Commander-in-Chief, I believe we must keep information secret that protects our operations and our people in the field. To do so, we must enforce consequences for those who break the law and breach their commitment to protect classified information. But a free press is also essential for our democracy. That's who we are. And I'm troubled by the possibility that leak investigations may chill the investigative journalism that holds government accountable. Journalists should not be at legal risk for doing their jobs.
I'm not sure how many of those cases that I have actually signed off on. I take them very seriously. I know that I have refused to sign a few, pushed a few back for modifications.
So here's the president saying journalists shouldn't be at risk, legal risk. And yet he endorses full confidence in Eric Holder, who now admits, or it turns out, signed off on a search warrant, essentially, that named Rosen as a co-defendant, something that has never had, you've never had a successful prosecution, even an attempt since Nixon, of a journalist as a criminal co-conspirator in a leak case. So this is unique. It isn't just that he signed a search warrant. It's that he did something extremely unusual. And the president, at the one hand, says, this should never happen, but well, my attorney general did it, so I will look into it. What is he, a bystander here? He's the boss. He's the man in charge. I think what we're going to have is Holder on the Hill. He should be under oath, and he should answer this. And perhaps he'll say, like the Secretary of State, I don't read the stuff I sign. But that's not going to be easy to do.
Hearing down the road very quickly, of these three, it looks like it's tracking the most dangerous for the administration?
I mean, it sounds like a cop-out. I think they all are in their own different ways.
It is a cop-out. Chuck?
The press stuff does manage to bring Fox News and the mainstream media together, all on the same side, and it's not the president's.
For the man on the street, it's the IRS.
This has been a Sunfish production.